Guys, welcome to everyone listening in, and welcome back to another episode of the Msfdn on now. Before I get started, I thought it'd just be good for me listening to the previous podcast so far and how everyone's been so enjoyed to speak on the topics that we've had so far, and just seeing what everyone has to say because, like, the things that we've been saying, they're so essential for all of us to sort of understand the world around us and how it works as well. So yeah, like I've really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for being on this journey, and we're still going. So today we're basically going to be talking about the different sorts of things that young people are less able to do or have limited access to basic services based on whether or not they have disabilities of any kind and how it can affect their lives and career. And I'll just say as well, like before we get started, that it's so disheartening to sort of think that many people can sort of feel as though they're unable to be physically effective in any sort of capacity, and how that could mean that they're incapable of chasing your dreams. I hope that as we move forward in society, like those sort of bridges get broken down so anyone with any form of disability can do the job they want to do, and there's always a place for them to be welcome. I'm just going to assume that everyone who's here obviously knows about this podcast, but again, for those who don't, I thought I'd just underline what it's basically about. So this podcast is obviously going to be about young people and their personal or professionals in life, and it's just going to be based on how to get there as best as possible, or the boundaries and topics around that in a whole. So that's going to be the focus of discussion. Also, quick disclaimer, guys, if you do have something to say while someone else is speaking, just make sure that you do either send a message or do what Asil just did and raise your hand. Thank you for that, man. And then also, if you hear anyone is talking, please just do your best to stay on mute so that we can reduce feedback issues and everyone gets heard properly. But yeah, I'm going to stop rambling. Let's get into the discussion. Shiayan, take it away.
On today's podcast, our main focus is going to be talking about different issues. So I can't say this word. Society places on career goals for those who have a form of disability, and we will be focusing on any kind of disability that can affect young people, whether that be physical, mental, and so on. My question to start off this discussion is, what kind of impact do you think having a form of disability can have on your ability to excel at work? And to go a little, should really be a deciding factor for a company on whether or not the person is an effective worker. What do you think?
All right, so obviously I've sort of gave my opinion on this already, and I think someone can be dealing with any form of disability, and so they're not as effective in regards to a company. Do you know what I mean? But I think I want to start off from an earlier stage of problems for people who have any form of disability, because I'm sure we all know about how difficult it is for people who are, for example, dyslexic during school. Now, in school times, I've literally who were dyslexic and had trouble reading and attaining information, and their comprehension wasn't so great. So they were literally put into a category of people who would not be able to take all of the exams because apparently they weren't able to be taught as well as other people. And I think that in itself sort of is the root of the problem that maybe they face later on in life, where they're stuck to doing manual labor and can't chase the jobs that they want to do in any sort of industry. It's not fair. Like, I feel like what should have been done for them was maybe giving them some form of extra intervention so that we can actually, supply the resources for the kind of people that need, then saying, that person's not up to par. Let's make sure that they're put into the cream of the crop instead of putting them at the top. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's wrong. And like Ali said, everyone does deserve a chance, It's wrong. What do you think, Shan?
Really don't agree with it, fair, because I feel like everyone deserves a chance. And I mean, there's some people with hidden disabilities that no one will know about, even coming down to going to an interview. If they don't mention that they've got that disability and they don't know and they give them that job, do you know what I mean? How are they going to know? So can be seen or something like that, and they look at them and go, well, I don't want to employ you because you've got this disability, thinking that it's going to affect their job. I actually do think it's disgusting. I actually went into JD once and I was so happy to see it. Like I literally, when I come out, I said to who I was with, I was like, that is literally like the nicest thing I've ever seen. There was a man in there, and you could see he had like Down syndrome, and like he was very different to the others. And I thought that is so good of JD to do that, considering like they're a big brand. And I was like, he was so lovely, bless him. He was like trying to make jokes. He was a brilliant employee, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to recognize. Like just because someone might be someone be a disability of any kind doesn't mean that person should, like I was saying before, be treated as though they will be ineffective. I think that there's like, in my opinion, there's always a measure that can be in place. Do you get what I mean? Like it's the whole idea of we have a Paralympics for a reason. Like these people may be physically disabled, but they are still given a chance to fight for world championships. And I think that's something we need to remember is if we're given that sort of recognition in the workplace, it should be the same thing. Why isn't there resources put in place for people who are disabled to still chase the same dream? Do you know what I mean? And that is what I personally feel wrong. Asil, what do you think?
So basically, hi everyone, first of all, and when you just say disabilities, I actually disagree with the word itself because let's say, for example, you're deaf or you're blind. The blind person will be able to hear more than someone who has vision. Like we all have senses. Some senses are better improved than others, and just restricting uh, the word disable makes them publicly disabled when they're not. And the problem with that is, for example, they have too many standards, just like in school. In school, that you have a specific standard that you have to follow. Whereas and also in companies, sorry, not whereas, but in companies, they also have their typical standards where they need someone who worked for years while he had master's degrees or doctorates. And I think, first of all, it's unfair because they're not
Having a lacking in something only increases your ability in other areas. And you're actually right. It is factual that if someone is, for example, deaf or blind, the other sense takes over in a way that we can't actually reach. And I think that in itself is like, cool. So why do we call this a disability? If someone's going to be able to enhance their senses much better than us, their potential is so much more. And the whole idea of potential, I want to take it a little bit further. I've got a family member who is autistic, and it's my nephew, and obviously I love him, and he's an amazing kid. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of people would class him as disabled, and to me, he's not disabled. Do you know what I mean? Like, he is just not. And the reason why I say that is because he can do everything I can do. Do you understand? Everything. But he can do even more than me. And I genuinely mean that. Like, his understanding or his comprehension of mathematical formulas is insane. The way that he can retain information about even a video game is insane. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things he can do that I can't do. And it's like, he's able to click with things. Like, not too long ago, he started getting interested in music. And for a person who is autistic, when they're interested in something, they give 120, not even 100, 120% of their energy into it. So they end up becoming unbelievably like experience that they're interested in. Which means to me, like, we're calling this a disability, but read that, is that not like, he's more enhanced than me? Do you know what I mean? So why do we shun these kind of people? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with him in my eyes at all. The only thing I notice is his retention of information is like flicking your fingers. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, man. I feel like disabilities in itself, like Asil was saying, it's not actually something we should look at as a disability. Look at what they gain rather than what they lose. Do you know what I mean? And even when they've lost, they've not lost. Do you know what I mean?
I we have points that's better than what someone like you were saying about autistic people, I feel like they're like kind of smarter in a way. Like they, I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying, but I do believe that they can do things that we can't. Like they also have more strength. Like if they wanted to go into like boxing or something like that, they would have a very good chance of getting into that career because they have a lot more strength than what like I would or something like that. There is a lot of points really about disabilities that I would say are good, to be honest.
I think it's like, do you know what? Before I continue, I want to actually mention what Zion said in the chat. So she says, my mum has schizophrenia. She has been in college 6 times and got 3 different qualifications, then went to uni. But as she has this mental illness, she can't work no more. So now she spent most of her time at home, which is bad for her socially. You know what? Yeah, see, that's the kind of stuff that actually makes me angry. Do you know what I mean? Because how is that fair? You know, you've got someone who's actually doing things that percent of the population ain't doing. Do you know what I mean? Actually getting qualifications and going to university, X, Y, Z. But it's like, hold on, because she's got this disability, she's not really like, they're not going to open the door to her. And do you know what? I can't even fathom it because it's like there's no logical sense in it. And to me, it probably even dates back to economics because they probably look at someone and say, oh, this person's got a disability. We're going to need to put things in place for them, X, Y, and Z. This is going to cost us money. Maybe we should just go with someone who doesn't. And that's heartbreaking. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me that even that could be the case. But it's just so wrong, man. Asil, go ahead.
So basically, I just been reading what Sydney just wrote, saying that her nephew has been kicked out of mainstream school because of the teachers don't know how to teach him and how he would understand it. And that's something that makes me angry, like you said, because school, yeah, like I said earlier, it's just like company. They have specific standards, traditional way of teaching, and there's no way on earth that change that. That's why we need charities like Msfdn and stuff because some people are better like with listening. They learn better reading. They learn better from practicing. Everyone has their own ways because a teacher who has one way to teach but not the other is kicking out his student. Honestly, that's disgusting because he's a teacher. He's supposed to teach and adapt, not just teach and stick to his methods.
Exactly. Do you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because my nephew's actually been through the same sort of thing. Has to go to a school where it's catered towards them, and it's like, how's that fair? Because why are we putting them in a different bracket? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like the fact that they think, like Asil was saying, you can't teach someone a different way. You have to have the one size fits all approach to education. That has it made me angry for a long time. The idea that teaching and the curriculum and the system doesn't seem to understand that they have to adapt their process to achieve the same outcome for different people. Do you know what I mean? Everyone is different. But the fact that we're even putting disability on its own brush when everyone's different anyway doesn't make no sense. Do you get what I'm saying? How can you have 10 people in a class who all have different learning abilities, is labeled disabled? You're going to take them out because it needs to be in around these like-minded. Everyone's different. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't make sense to me that can be the case. It does need to, still saying, MSFDN is important. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they are raising attention to standing up for things are, things that we should stand up for. Go ahead, Sharon, and then Aliyah, if you want to.
I agree with what you're saying, but I feel like sometimes you couldn't, with disabilities and stuff, some disabilities, I don't think you could go and put them in a school set, like a massive school with loads of children and stuff like that. Sometimes people will pick on them and stuff. Like I've got a cousin, he's and he has to go to a special school because if he went to a big school, people make fun of him, like when he goes out on his bike and stuff, people make fun of him like that. So he's got severe autism, I would say, and he used to come out with us. Like I just made friends with him and said, like, you can be my friend, like, don't worry about everyone else. And would go out, and the amount of abuse he would get, like the amount of people that was nasty to him, and I would always say, do you know what, like, yous are actually horrible just because he might be a little bit different, or he might have something wrong with him that we haven't. It's out of order, and yous are disgusting. Yous have been brought up so that if people had more of a heart and made friends maybe with are a little different, then things might be different.
Yeah, 100%. And like I was saying, sorry, Aaliyah, I'm gonna get to you. Like I was saying, I feel like, just to sum up what I was trying to say there, was the whole problem with how disabled people are treated at the start-up points in their life, going through school and etc. Like, to me, it's honestly the regime. It's the system. You can't bring someone into a system that is cutthroat and then shun them for being hurt by it. You've got to actually look at the people who are creating these problems and go, right, get that person and take them somewhere else, because that person is the one trying to inflict some form of injustice on the ones who actually need the learning and have a right to be there. No disabled person needs to opinion. The schools need to be changed. Aaliyah, go ahead, say what you want to say.
Oh, I was just gonna agree with what Cheyenne was saying, and just say that, like, I've got two younger brothers that have both got special needs, and they went to mainstream primary school and started at mainstream secondary school, and like, it was awful. They was constantly getting in trouble. My mum was constantly having to go in for meetings, and like, both of them were failing like all their classes, and like, my mum got to a point where she was like, I can't do this anymore. And now they both go to like a school that specializes for their needs. Both doing like really well, like his like qualifications in maths and English, and he's made friends. So like, I understand what you're saying, that mainstream schools do need to accommodate to people who needs more, but these schools are also really, really good, and they can be beneficial to people with special needs.
Do you know what? I do get what you're saying, because obviously these sort of schools that are specializing in them, they are made for them, which is great. There's no denying that going to a specialized school for someone will make it a lot easier to learn. That is great, but why can't that process be brought into mainstream? Do you get what I mean? So that we don't have to have a bracket for a type of person. Do you get what I mean? And that's the issue in itself, is that we tend to think, right, fit in like this, we can make it sick for them, but it has to be everything else is, and that is where I have a problem with it. Like, I wish my autistic nephew could have been put into a situation where he didn't have to go to a specialized school. He could have just been taught the way that he deserved to get taught. Tasha, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Aaliyah, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, but if Tasha wants to go first.
Yeah, thanks, Raz. I was gonna say that, like, as much as you guys that they should like bring that like practice that in public schools, sometimes it's not, I don't think it's the school. I think it may be the students within the school. Like, you can teach equality and anti-bullying, but the teachers can't follow the students everywhere and watch their every move. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I know, like, an assembly may promote all these things, but at time in the playground, and sometimes it's hard to control these things, and there are some children that maybe actually, like, they've never experienced or been around somebody like this, so it's very new to them as well, so they may handle it differently. So I just see it as, instead of to just remove this person from this situation and put them in a better place where there are people like them, and just
No, I do get what you're saying, actually. Like, obviously, the sad reality, it is sad still. Do you know what I mean? Like, even though yeah, it is true that the schools have students who aren't going to be so accustomed to people who are different to them. I think it's just sad that the reality is this way. Do you know what I mean? Like in an ideal world, people should be able to, you know, cooperate regardless of what they look like or regardless of how they are as a person. And I don't feel like that should be how it is in real life. And I think that's what my issue with it is, and where it stems from is the fact that yeah, we have got these situations. Do you know what I mean? Where people are going to treat them differently, but I just wish they didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like I wish people, because no one deserves to be treated as though they're inadequate, different to you. You know. Aaliyah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, like, as much as I agree with what you're saying, like, it must be really hard for the teacher, because imagine there's one teacher trying to teach like a classroom of like 30 kids, and she can't teach every child in a different way. Like, even when I was in school, we had like the top set, the middle set, the bottom set. So the kids are still being divided and being taught like the best way that they can. And I think this is just kind of another way of doing that. Like Tash was saying, it's having all the same people that learn in the same way all together with one person to teach them, if I'm making sense.
Going on here? Sorry, yeah, I do get you, but again, like you guys are saying what I totally agree with. Do you know what I mean? Like it honestly all makes sense that yeah, this is how it is. Do you know what I mean? I think my idea is why isn't it put in a way that just benefits them? Do you know what I mean? Even though yeah, maybe there are some real hurdles with it and things that we can't control, like the students or the teacher's ability to actually teach everyone individually differently. Do you know what I mean? But it's like that separation causes conflict in my mind, you know? The idea of, oh, if you are dealing with things like autism or dyslexia, the fact that you aren't being accepted in the same way other students are. Like I wasn't one of the smartest people in school, but I certainly know how it felt to be in the top set and be put onto 3 different tables depending on your ability to answer one question. Do you know what I mean? So imagine that's me being someone who doesn't have a disability, and I mean, I'm no different to them, but like, imagine how they must have felt, you know, being told, right, oh, yeah, sorry, we're gonna need to move you to a specialized school, like, you know, and I think that is the heart wrenching thing. Like, in an ideal world, it would be great that everyone could be treated equally without no judgment, especially by students, you know. Asil, go ahead.
Two things. So what you just said right now, and also what Tasha said earlier. So Tasha said that it's hard for the teachers sometimes because even the students are on it. They are the ones bullying, and they are the ones who actually are not punished for it. And I mean, when they are, I don't think they are being punished the right way. And I'm not qualified to say what way it should be. Implemented, they have to somehow find a way, take it more seriously. Because I remember, primary school I was getting bullied, secondary as well, and then when I came in the UK it was all good. But like when I see how careless not all teachers, yeah, some teachers are great, but like a lot of the teachers and heads and stuff, yeah, most of them are really careless, because if they were not, the system will be so much better, and that's what needs to be improved.
Exactly. I
And
100%. Sorry, go on, continue.
yeah, and wait, what was it earlier you said? The last thing you said?
No, I just what I was saying was that how like obviously realistically things are going to be a certain way, but in an ideal world we
Okay, I
shouldn't be
remember now.
separating. Yeah.
I remember. Now it's when you said about the special schools. So the fact that they mention, it's like when I said disabled, they're not really disabled, but they're labeled as disabled. And the fact that we have to mention specialized school and put them aside from the main school has already a psychological effect. It has an effect on the parents of whichever kid is going there. They would think that he's different, and while everyone is different, Yeah, we either say they're all normal or they're all different. If you see what I mean, you don't discriminate between normal and different. If you see, I don't know if I explain it well, but yeah. And while they do that, imagine me, yeah. Let's say, for example, I have autism or I have dyslexia, yeah. They put me in a special block of the school because there used to be one in my college, in my sixth form, yeah. And while there's this big building for disabled people, there's the other all the other buildings are for normal people. And when the students see that, they'll be like they'll be quick to judge. They'll be quick to be like, oh, you should be in this block, or oh, you should be in this block because they're acting dumb and stuff. So that's why I'm saying by the system needs to be changed visually and psychologically.
1,000,000%. Like the whole idea of how they do it isn't the problem. It's the psychological and physical effect, the visual effects of how they do it. You know, categorizing might be effective, but it's also ineffective in that it has other effects. It might be like economically feasible and it might technically bring good grades, but is it ethically logical and is it psychologically beneficial? Probably not. Do you know what I mean? Even in my school, I visually remember there being a specific dorm, even outside of the school, completely separate, where it was like one of those built sheds where they take people who are in difficulties and learn all day. And then they'd bring them in when no one else is having lunch and they'd have food separate to everyone else. And that kind of separation, come on, man. Like, I understand that there are difficulties with the system in itself, but that just means that the system needs to be changed so that we can adopt these things, so that it can be easier for everyone, you know? I do want to change the conversation so that we're going on to some other topics as well. But Cheyenne, say what you want to say.
I think you just read my mind because I was going to do the same thing. I was just going to say, what effect do you think it has on a certain person with a disability trying to go into a career? And do you think that employers might discriminate against someone having a disability and think that will affect their career in the long run?
100%. Like, the thing for me is, I feel like there's multiple factors as to why I do believe that is true. Do you know what I mean? I think one of the reasons why I believe that is true is because what you got to remember is any company, any job, any business, any focus, like other than what I've been seeing with Msfdn about how they actually cater to people with mental illnesses, they focus on economics. You know what I mean? And for a lot of companies, even though it's very horrible, like, to know this is a fact, but it's not economically feasible for them to employ a disabled person in their eyes over someone who isn't disabled, because they're going to need extra training, they're going to need extra support to do the same job that they believe others are going to do effectively. And again, this is sort of like how it was in school. Do you know what I mean? Where people would have to be put into a certain bracket, taught a certain way, given a certain class, just to be able to do the same thing as everyone else. And yeah, man, I think that's one of the biggest problems. I would say another reason why I believe that is true is because in reality, I might be sort of talking about mainly retail, because obviously there are companies that would cater to them, but in retail environments, there's a lot of discrimination. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know firsthand that there's a lot of discrimination, because even working for some of the companies I've worked for, I've been subject to it. So I know, even for a person who they won't see as a disabled person, imagine what they do to someone who is. Do you know what I mean? Like, they will say in their company quota, "Oh yeah, we are a company that is multicultural and culturally accepting and allow every." But in reality, their ethos when they go through their day-to-day tasks is completely different. You know, Asil, go ahead.
So you were saying about the fact that economically it might not fit them, and again, I think that's another psychological aspect, because they're being labeled as different, as disabled, as whatever. And while it's unfair, they're also, it's, again, I'm gonna say the same thing, I guess, but it's just a waste again, because they're being selfish, to be honest. They're not thinking through more than
that they think they should. They have their normal standards, procedures, and they think they're fine, it's perfect. They want to improve it, but they don't want to improve it towards this path or this other path. And honestly, like, let's say for example, on the job interview, there's someone who we labeled as disabled because he has, I don't know, autism, or maybe because he's mute. While there are some constraints, he also has different strengths, because as you grow up as a disabled person, let's say someone who I don't know, who had to for example, someone who is unable to walk, he had to find different ways to walk, and his brain develops and he adapts to new conditions. He adapts more and more and more and more. And someone who's blind, he can probably read better than someone who reads more, actually, than someone who's not blind. Someone who's deaf will be able to do a better job visually than someone who's not deaf, etc., etc. They don't take into consideration what they actually can do. They always think about what they can't do, if you see what I mean.
100%, man. That in itself, again, is the problem, The whole idea that, they're not looking at the pros of having someone like that. As in, like, in reality, it could easily boost a company's image for the fact that they hold no regard for who it is that they have working for them, and they accept all. Instead, they're looking at the problems for them, which is selfish. Like you said, they're choosing to look at, we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z to cater for this person, instead of thinking, we can actually do this, this, and that because we've got this person. Do you know what I mean? And really, we need to look at these people who they classify as disabled as admirable. Do you know what I mean? Because these people have to go through their day-to-day with things that we wouldn't actually understand or even comprehend. Like, I feel like they are a lot stronger than most people, long story short, because the idea of being deaf or being blind or having some form of mental disability or physical, I could never understand that. You know what I mean? Because I don't think I would be strong enough. Do you know what I mean? But these people do. And so maybe it's more of a thing where we need to see these people as admirable rather than as inadequate, because a lot of these companies will do. Do you know what I mean? And that in itself is very, very wrong. Cheyenne, go ahead.
I was just gonna speak on a little bit. I feel like it depends. Answering your question, I've got two things. Answering your question, I do feel like it depends on the employer, whether they're gonna shorten your opportunities further in the job role. But I feel like if it was something like if there was a person with a disability coming into Msfdn, they would have the most support. They would have all the opportunities open to them, because that is what Msfdn's about. Whereas I feel like if it was like an office job or something like that, it 100% depends on the person, the employer, because some will be discriminating, some will be different. You just really don't know. And I was going to say, I feel like some people with disabilities, they are harder to teach, of course, but I feel like they are made to feel like they can't work, because when you're doing, like, I don't know, when you're signing up for UC or there's PIP and things like that, I feel like then these things have been made to people with disabilities try not to go into work, whereas I do find that really bad. Like my mum, she's got really bad mental health, and she's been told that she can't work. She physically can't work because of how bad her mental health is, and I think that is terrible. So I feel like they just chuck money at people so they don't go into work, so it's easier for them. And I think it is really bad, like with PIP and stuff. Like the money is like a full-time job sometimes, depending on your disability, and they put you in categories. So if you've got a severe disability, you will get more money. If it's not so bad, you'll get less. Like the top disability, you get a free car and they pay your insurance and things like that. And I feel like that is really discriminating, and they should be pushed to work, just like I'm pushed to work with like universal credit and stuff like that. Do you agree with me, everyone?
I agree somewhat because I do definitely agree that there are companies that think too much about their image and then choose to discriminate because they think this sort of person in our company will tarnish our image, which does make me angry, I will be honest. But I somewhat disagree with the whole idea of disabled people should be pushed to work, and because I think it's less about being pushed to work and being accepted in work. Do you get what I mean? Like, these people don't, I don't feel like a disabled person necessarily generalized doesn't want to work. Do you know what I mean? There are definitely hundreds and thousands of disabled people who have aspirations, have dreams, you know? I'm sure we've all seen countless videos of, you know, like inspirational people in society going and meeting someone who has forms of disability because they're their inspiration and that's where they want to be in their life, you know? And I think that that's something we need to recognize is people that are disabled, they don't need to, the problem isn't really being pushed to work or how much they're being offered for work. It's how much they are actually necessary to a company. Do you know what I mean? Companies don't feel like they want disabled people or don't feel like they will achieve much by having them there, and that is the problem. That's the root of the issue, you know. Sil, go ahead.
Earlier you were saying about that's something I won't be able to do. That's something that's beyond my comprehension. And in a way, I think that makes us able people disabled, as in we have too much comfort and we do not know how to get out of it. Whereas those who have difficulties or disabilities, as we say it, they had to live outside of that comfort and they had to adapt. They had to learn new ways to live. And that in itself, uh, it's a power in itself because it's their superpower because they are able to do stuff like you said that we cannot do, no matter even if we have the physical or potential ability to do or mental ability to do. We cannot be like they are because we have not been through what they have been, and that in itself is a reason why we shouldn't label them because they're actually, in a way, they're actually superior to us.
100%. Now I know this might sound silly, but the whole idea of you said of them being like superhumans, yeah, reminded me of when I watched Marvel's Daredevil series, and I feel like that's just it's a perfect example because even though it is dramatized of he's got this amazing fighting ability, what that show does is it sort of captures in the best way possible what it really is like to be blind and how they don't see it like the guy who plays that the superhero Daredevil, he doesn't see it as a deficiency. You know, you obviously see there are limits to what he can do. He can't understand how someone's facial expression is and etc etc, but he knows his surroundings. He knows how to understand scenarios, and because of his blindness he's able to pick up things that we can't pick up. Someone's heart rate, someone's like their strain on their blood vessels, etc. Like, even though it is dramatized, it was the best way for me to understand that, you know, these disabilities, they are not disabilities, you know. These people are a lot stronger than you would think because, as I was saying before and I'll say again, if I was in that situation, I would not know what to do. But these people still live every day, you know. So hats off to them, and I feel like that is exactly their gifts, Tasha, because they're able to do things that we cannot fathom. And that's what makes me angry about companies and schools and etc. What we've been talking about this whole time of not accepting them. You're choosing not to accept someone who is more capable than you would ever be. Do you know what I mean? And that's the facts. Aaliyah, did you want to say something or did you?
I feel like the moment passed.
Well, if the moment comes back for you, raise your hand. Asil, go ahead.
You know, when you spoke about Daredevil, that reminded me of something that's actually more realistic. That's actually happened. It's MasterChef. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a MasterChef winner who was blind. She's blind, yeah, and yet she made the best dishes. She was actually astonishing. Gordon Ramsay and the other judges. She actually shocked. They were actually surprised, and sometimes they were doubting she was blind, because she was using her senses to taste the ingredients and produce. And when she produces, when she does the plating and stuff, it looks better than most other chefs that were with her, and that were plating using their eyes. And see, that's a great example. They live through a different kind of hell that we do. Yeah, we all live through hell. Yeah, but they live through different kind, where they have to adapt to every single situation in a way we theoretically we can do, but we haven't grown to do in this way. And yeah, it's just, imagine, like, it can be a blessing sometimes to not have eyes, because you're able to use your your taste buds, your smell, and your ears better. And cooking is fit for for a blind person. As what was her name? I think it was Christine. Yeah, Christine Hart. She's the MasterChef winner, and she's a living proof that disabled people can achieve more than able people.
100%. I actually never heard of that before, right? But even just hearing you say that a person went onto MasterChef and was blind and created dishes that were better than everyone else, again, it's a whole thing of I can't imagine being able to do that. But that person did it with finesse. And that's because, like Tasha's saying, their disability is a replacement gift.
She
Something
won
was
the whole
taken.
thing. Yeah, she didn't
Sorry,
just make the best dish. She won the whole thing.
that I'm speechless. That's crazy. Honestly, like that just tells you, innit? It literally speaks for itself. And like, yeah, what Tasha was saying of the whole idea of it's a replacement gift. Yeah, something was taken from them, but what they was given back was in abundance. Their senses, like we all have senses, but being one taken from you, the other ones are gonna be 10 times better again. So it's like, how can we really say, yeah, me being a corporate businessman and me saying, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to employ so and so because it's not going to be advantageous for me. The reality is, it's always going to be advantageous because these people are a lot more skilled than we choose to believe. And I think that is the recognition that society should have. And I said it before and I'll say it again. This is why I respect MSFDM, because the whole ethos of actually caring about people's mental health is something you don't see. Like, I can't put my hands up and say a company actually really cares. A lot of them will do it for image. They don't actually do the things that they are stating. I've worked for a lot of retail companies and they will say time and time again, oh yeah, we care about people's mental health and we care about, not being discriminating towards people in such an industry and etc. etc. But it's not true. It's just for an image. Cheyenne, go ahead.
I was just going to ask a question. How do you think it makes these people feel being discriminated? Like, if they went into a job, how do you think they walk out of that job feeling if they feel like they have actually been discriminated? Do you think that has an impact on their mental health too?
Do you know what? I think we'd be silly to believe not. Because what you gotta understand is how many of you lot, yeah, have went into a job interview, given it your all, walked out, and when you've walked out, they've told you, yeah, we'll give you a call, and you're not getting that call. You walk out feeling depressed. You're like, oh damn, like I went in there thinking I was gonna get this job. And I walk out of that place and I start feeling angry, upset, confused. I'm like, what went wrong? No, forget them. No, but I wanted them, and all these thoughts run through my head. Now imagine if you actually did everything right and they just didn't choose you because of who you are.
Yeah, that's every time I've gone for an interview and not get it. I sit there and I ask myself why. I get upset. I think, what have I done wrong? So I can't imagine maybe someone with a disability thinking that it's because they have a disability, and especially if they've done everything right, like they've literally smashed the interview, but they've just been discriminated because of who they are.
honestly, it's just that's the reason why I say like these people are stronger, because we say discrimination is wrong. We say all of these things are wrong, but then they look at someone, know they're disabled, and choose not to pick them, and they think that they can say, "Oh yeah, we're not discriminating," and then we want to say, "Oh yeah, like we have a hard time." Imagine being them. Imagine actually going through your day to day and knowing that someone is immediately going to look at you and look at you different, because you see how people look at others who are normal when in reality everyone's normal. We're all different anyway. Do you know what I mean? Before I get on to you, Sarah and Sharon, I want to talk about what Ellie's put in the chat, because I think it's something we should all recognize as well. Thank you for sending this, by the way, as well, Ellie. She said, in the fashion industry in Victoria's Secret, they have a model who has Down syndrome, and a lot of people wouldn't have thought she'd be good enough to model for Victoria's Secret, and she proved the doubt was wrong. She's the very first model in that brand to have Down syndrome ever. That is like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Hearing things like that.
yeah, like I'm happy to hear that, because it means that, like, we all know, regardless of whether or not you even have a disability, the fashion industry is cutthroat. Like, I know through a lot of my friends who have tried to become models and have tried to model for this company, that company, went to this place. Like, we went all around London and tried to find someone who would accept them into etc. etc. And it was like they never really got accepted because they're not tall enough, or they're not skinny enough, or their cheekbones are too this and this, their nose is too that. So imagine having Down syndrome or any other disability, getting into Victoria's Secret, which is basically the creme de la creme of fashion, and actually holding it down, you know? That, I just take my hat off, because it's like, this is the way society should be going. Do you know what I mean? This is what I want to see. Want to see more of this, you know, of people being accepted regardless, you know, especially in a fashion industry where looks is everything. They like, I don't know if it's, do you know what? I was about to say that Msfdn main account. Is it because they care, or is it a promotional tool? Ha. Do you know what? I want to think good, innit? I don't want to think bad. I don't want to think these people are doing this just because they can say, yeah, we gave them a chance. Like, no, because that, do you know what? I can't even tell you, because it's a cutthroat world, but hopefully they did it for the right reasons. Sarah, go ahead.
I wanted to add on to that. I was going to say, I think the media's made brands and like TV shows have more pressure to accept these kind of people. Like, I've noticed Love Island this year are trying to find disabled people to take on, but what was said in the chat I agree with. I think it's more so they don't get disliked, and it looks like that they're actually working with the community, but really I think it's all just to sell their brand a bit more, because when you think about it, if I don't want to say normal person, that doesn't sound right, but if we go for something like working for brands, we will probably get shortlisted, but we'll also go up against other people who are prettier and better, but also that can be reflected on disabled people, because they still have that battle, because they're still going to want to get the best disabled person on there to promote their brand. And I think that could hit mental health a bit more, because that disabled person's come out, put himself out there, applied for this thing, and they're still going to get let down.
100%, man. Like, obviously, in an ideal world, and I'll keep saying an ideal world because I know that everyone believes this is the way it should be. In an ideal world, people who have disabilities would be able to go into these industries not as a marketing stunt, not to better a brand's image, but just because it's the right thing to do and they should be accepted anyway. Do you know what I mean? But that's the actual problem is what, like the main account has said, why is it only being done when these things hit the news or is a hot topic? It's a marketing deal. Do you know what I mean? Like they know they're going to get a lot of recognition for choosing to do these things. And even though, yeah, like I was saying, it's a great thing that it's been done, the reality of it is what happened behind closed doors, A, and B, will that happen for an average Joe? Probably not. Like, they've done it because they know they're a big company and they'll get a lot of recognition. But like I was saying, you walk into your job and if you have a form of disability, they're not going to choose you because you have that disability, or you're less likely to be picked. And that's just for average people, you know, your average people. So I think, yeah, even though it's great, like, that in, you know, real, what's the word? In big companies where their image is important to them, these sort of things are being done, even though it's sort of a marketing, like, is this stuff being done for people of just the average public, you know, just the normal people? I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. What have you said here? Same with BAME community, love being given and opportunities being promoted only because of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, obviously, this is just a prime example of people choosing to do something because it's trending. You know what I mean? Because it is what people want to see rather than what should be seen. Even though it should be seen, that's not why they're doing it. Do you know what I mean? So maybe there's also a point of, maybe we need to recognize the intentions of people when they choose to shed light on things that should be shed light on, you know? Sarah, go ahead.
I feel like people take advantage when they see these things on the news as well. Like when Black Lives Matter came around, it seemed like no one cared before that, but as soon as it was a thing, everyone was like, oh my God, I support it. Like, I do this, I do that. Like, I've helped this person. But then I think some other people, like playing devil's advocate, other people playing it like, oh, well, now this has come out. This has happened because of my race, or this has happened because of this. And I feel like it's a whole battle between the media and like real life world experience, but I feel like the media influences everything that happens within businesses, within opinions, within the news, and because we're all on social media and use it so much, we all want to be a part of it. We all want to be part of this big parade that's going around, and I think that's a really big problem.
100%, man. Like, just the whole idea of, you know, where's the reality in it? Because people are just doing this because it looks cool. Do you know what I mean? Where is the actual real heart in people? When are they actually gonna go, you know what? We're doing this because it's the right thing to do, not because everyone seems to care about it now, you know? And before I get on to you, Tasha, I just want to say one more thing. Like, why is it now, a couple years on, people are not still chanting if it really mattered to them? Which it is something that matters, but did it matter to them that much? Not really then, because nobody's still talking about it, you know? Tasha, go ahead.
So my question now is, like, you guys, I'm sure you guys know like how powerful the public is. Like, without the public, these companies are literally nothing. So if we were to all like with that H&M thing, if we were to all like stop buying H&M now, H&M is like, they're done for kind of thing. So my question is like, what do you guys think the best solution would be? Would it be to like now stop supporting these companies and like stop applying to these jobs that discriminate against people, or do we like now protest? Because something has to be done. Like, obviously us talking about it is a step, but it's like, what would the next step be for that to be resolved?
I want to answer that, but I want to see what you guys think. Sarah, go ahead.
I completely agree with what Tasha says. I just wanted to say that I completely forgot what I was going to say after. Come back to me.
That's all good. If you are looking for an answer, I would say, personally, it's all about integrity before action. Do you get what I mean by that? Because we could do 101 different things to try and solve the problem, but if there isn't a real integrity and people aren't doing it for a real cause and not to be a part of a trend or not to be a part of an agenda or not to be noticed or not to be recognized, then regardless of what we do, regardless of the choice we make to try and change things, it's not going to be genuine and it won't last. You know, there's so many situations where people could have been in the public eye talking about something that truly matters, but they only did it for their own gain, or they only did it because they want to be promoted. And then the whole message of it, the whole point of it sort of gets lost, you know? Cheyenne and then Sarah.
So Tasha was saying about something needs to be done, like protests and stuff. I think protests are a good way to kind of make awareness of something, but also there's bad points about it. But I was just gonna say, like, maybe if more stuff was done, like protests and stuff, then maybe we would get a bit further and there'll be more awareness.
100%. I think one thing as well, like what Asil said in the chat, even though in my honest opinion, I wish this weren't the case. I have to agree. He said, talking about it is one thing, applying it is another. The world is too selfish to care, and I don't see these issues being resolved anytime soon, if ever, unfortunately. And you know what? Even though it's sad, like, sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves. Will there be a difference, you know? I don't personally see it on a grand scale. I see companies like Msfdn making an impact to our community, which is always great, you know? And this is the kind of stuff that we need. But the problem is there ain't too many like Msfdn out there where the integrity is true and, you know, like we're trying to actually push the agenda worldwide. So, yeah, like I was saying, the problem is, like, in my opinion, people are selfish, you know? And, yeah, main account as well, like the idea that sometimes the message gets lost, like, yes, the message always gets lost, especially when people feel like there is a hidden agenda between why someone's doing something and the reality of the situation. There's always a lost message, and that is the problem as well, you know. Sarah, go ahead.
I want to say, I feel like the community, if we actually all come together, then there could be a difference. But the problem is everyone in the community is so afraid of each other in a way, and when you hear the word protest, all that goes through your head is like fires and shops being broken and like youths on motorbikes and things like that. But I definitely think there's a larger scale to what the population knows. Like, I reckon there's a lot more secrets that are behind, well, a lot further up than what we can even imagine. Because, for example, like the war with Putin, I have a friend in the war, and I go to him and say, oh my God, I've heard this in the news. Is it true? Like, are we all going to die and all this? And he's like, don't listen to the news. Like, this hasn't even happened yet. And it just goes to show that even the news can be kind of fake to an extent, but people will listen to it so much and take it in and start panicking. And that's because they're so influenced by the media and what the media shows. And I feel like that works exactly the same way with people when it comes to stereotyping as well.
100%. Like, it's just the whole idea of whether or not people are going to be able to be understood, because there's too much going on at a higher scale that controls these things, you know? And like the whole idea of, just to link it back to what we've been saying this whole time, people with disability gaining recognition, how we can get about it, how we can do something. The first thing is 100,000 people could want to do this from a street level, but if the the corporations at a high level ain't trying to stop this, then is there really a chance, you know? Like, that's basically what I have to say. I'm gonna ask you guys one more question before I wrap this up, because we are actually running over slightly. What do you guys actually think the world will be like in 10 years' time in regards to disabled people and their ability to gain the jobs that they may desire? Sarah, go ahead.
Well, I'm hoping that the awareness for disabled people will continue to spread further and they will continue to get more support. But I feel like there needs to be more companies and organisations that are tailored to disabled people to get their message across a bit more. Because I walk through the street and you look online and you don't see publications for disabled people. You don't see these shops that are promoting them. And I think that's such a big problem, because we have our own shops for our own clothes and like things we like, and they have nothing. They have to try and fit in with the whole world whilst being discriminated in a kind of way. So I reckon, I hope it gets better, but I don't have a lot of faith in the community.
Honestly, the way that it's looking, I can't blame you, but all we can do is hope, innit? Tasha, did you want to say? No? Okay, then. All right, guys. Oh, okay, sorry. Msfdn main account. What about those who live life with invisible illnesses? Well, this is the same thing, innit? Like, mental illnesses are in some ways invisible because sometimes people don't know you have them. And I feel like things that people can struggle with mentally is also a benefactor as to why we're not really treated as accepted, because, you know, like, what is at risk for these people, you know? Like, their mind state and how they go through their day-to-day life is already distorted because they already struggle with things like this. So then when it comes to acceptance around others, how the hell are they going to be able to cope with that, you know? Sarah, go ahead.
I feel like invisible illnesses should be treated the same, like just as important as visible illnesses. But I reckon as well, going on to that, they must feel a lot more pressure because it's easy to spot a disabled person who has it visibly, but when it's invisible, people were sitting there and they'll question like, are you actually ill, or are you just saying this? And then it's like that plays on their mental health as well, because they're like, well, I am ill, like why do you not believe me? And then that makes them worse. But I generally think there could be more support for illnesses that you can't see as well.
Well, yeah, obviously, man. Like, you're so right, because these people, they, you know, like at the end of the day, nobody asked to struggle with these sort of things, and so the last thing, the least they could ask for is support and at least being accepted. You know, like I know I'm rambling on, and I do want to cut this off, but I do want to say as well, like, we've all felt times when we felt anxious. You know, we've all had times where we felt depressed about something in some form of way. And, you know, the one thing we always ask for in that sort of moment of crisis that we have is a helping hand. You know, someone who can actually understand how we feel, or at least just be there for us to vent. So imagine people who have real forms of mental illness like dyslexia, you know, and the things that I've spoken about before, where there ain't no retribution, you know, there's no release. So how could, yeah, exactly, someone to listen to, not to try and change or fix them. And that's the point in it. Like, I feel like the way I can really round off this discussion is, for disabled people, they just need acceptance. They don't need change. They don't need categorization. They don't need recognition. They just need acceptance. And that's basically how I want to wrap this up, guys. You know what? I've really enjoyed it because it's been good, man. Like, it is something that touches home for a lot of us here. We've all got family or friends that we know who have these issues and struggle day by day. So, you know, having this conversation, at least somebody's thinking about them, somebody's talking about them, and somebody wants to make something different for them. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. It's been wicked, and I will catch you guys on the next one. So take care.
Thank you.
No worries. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.